Welcome to the Jazz Drummers Blueprint, episode 10 this week. I'm Andy.
And I'm Tim.
And this episode, we're going to talk about subbing, both when you get asked to sub for another drummer, and also if you have a gig that you need to get a sub for, to sub for yourself. So let's talk first, I think, about when you get a sub gig. What usually happens when you get a sub gig? So what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of that, Tim?
Well, first you gotta say thank you. So let's say you get called to sub. It depends on what kind of gig that you're getting called to sub for. A lot of times, if you're getting called to sub for a Broadway show or something like that, you have to really know the music. You have to get the music ahead of time and just know everything, right? I've never subbed on Broadway, but I've had to go in and sub a show for local theaters. And it's really important that you get together with the drummer and know the show inside and out, almost better than the drummer that's subbing the gig to you, right? So that's for kind of those shows. And then show up early, try not to mess around with too much stuff in the pit. If the drummer's drums are still there, if you have to bring your own drums, show up really early, but hopefully everything's already set up there, because most of the time once the pit's set up, there's no moving it. That would be too big of a hassle most of the time for like miking and stuff like that. So for those types of gigs, just you have to really, 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 really know the show, and you want to get called back to be the sub for those, because a lot of times those gigs are hard to sub out because they require a lot of work. And so if you're like, it's almost like you're an understudy, right? So like if you get that kind of gig and you can sub it out, you can be the main sub. And then eventually maybe someday the main drummer won't want to do the gig anymore. And it depends on how long the run is. But, maybe the main drummer might want to hang it up and pass it on to someone, and you're kind of first in line for that gig. So having a great attitude and thanking everybody and being part of the band is a big part of it. One of the gigs that I get called for the most to sub for is at a church. And it's very, very similar. I play in this church. Actually, I got called to sub for them this whole month of June. It's June when we're recording this. And unfortunately, I'm gone every Sunday this June. I've got other gigs where I'm traveling, so I wasn't able to do it, which kind of is weird for me because I like being very, very dependable for them. So with that gig, they send me the music ahead of time and I learn it. Usually there's no charts, or if there are charts, the music's not too difficult. It's not like a CCM gig or anything. It's more of a folk type thing. And then they're all jazz musicians, so we all understand the same language, and it's a lot of fun. But so I'll just learn that music and try and play it really well, and do my best on that gig, and hopefully they really like it. And it's the same deal. You just be a good person and show up and have fun and make it comfortable for the rest of the band, and you'll do well. So the other types of subbing too, that's about it for what I get called for subbing, because man, Andy, I don't know about you, but there aren't too many regular gigs around. The only other regular gig I have is a big band that I play in once a month. That's our regular gig. We've been doing it since 2011, I believe. But yeah, how many other regular gigs are there?
Well, I guess so. It's funny because when we did the what was the one we were talking about gigging, and you went right to the hey, we're going to play at Madison Square Garden. and today I'm thinking oh, somebody called me to sub in for them at their jazz trio for jazz brunch at this restaurant down the road. And you're like, oh, what if I get called to sub for a Broadway show? That's funny. So the examples that you just gave are, they're pretty high level. They're probably all like reading gigs. So you got to have your reading together. Obviously you're going to have to be at the level, to do those kinds of things without too many rehearsals, things like that. So that's really cool. And that's if you're at that level, fantastic, and that's, I would say, that type of gig, it's worth it to get your reading together so that you can even be considered for that kind of gig, right?
That's a whole nother episode. Is do we need to read, right?
Yeah. But let's take a step back and let's go back to my more closer to beginner level, where you've been playing people start to know your name. You play at jazz jams, you have some gigs yourself, and you have some buddies that play. Somebody gets sick, they can't make it to a show, they call you up to sub for them. And so this kind of regular gig that I kind of have in my mind here is that like, maybe it's like a regular Thursday night at a restaurant somewhere or something. And maybe it's with guys that you've never played with before. Kind of what should your mindset be going into that kind of gig? And I've done a fair few of these. And I think that, again, the hypothetical that I'm thinking about is not necessarily like a reading gig, be more like a jazz standards type gig. But you do need to have an idea of the kind of tunes, maybe a tune list that the guys will often draw upon, so that you're at least familiar with the majority of the tunes. So for this kind of thing, I think the preparation side is maybe not as demanding as the examples that you were giving earlier, but the attitude.
Well, like let's say you're doing a jazz trio gig, you got to know tunes, you got to know standards.
Yeah.
I don't think the drummer should be showing up with a real book necessarily. I think you got to be able to show up and like you got to know forms, you got to know the music, right? If you're going to sub in a band like that. Now, being said too, though, it might not always be super high level, so that makes it a little bit more demanding too, right? Because then at that point, if it's going to stay together, you have to really know what's going on. Your ears have to be really big. So again, like it depends on the level of the musicians that you're playing with, and all that stuff. But I think no matter what, you got to know what you're doing. And that actually leads us into a really great segue into talking about the Jazz Drummers Blueprint, because that is my year-long, it's not just this podcast, but it's my year-long apprentice mastership, or what is it? It's not an apprenticeship. It's a year-long mentorship. There we go, Andy. Well, it's renewable too, so it's not just a year long, but it's a mentorship program that I have where we go in and we talk about scenarios like this, and we fix it. We make it so that you know tunes. We make it so that you know how to solo. We make it so that you know how to play, and you have the chops necessary to go in and play those gigs and sub in gigs like this really, really confidently. And what's better than that is that you have a group of people that have your back. And so we'll talk about it. We'll get you feeling comfortable. We'll hype you up for the gig and we'll get you going. It's really an amazing thing that we've got going on. Andy's been a part of it for a while now. And I don't know. It's just one of my, I sometimes at the end of the live lessons, I always say, you guys give me life. And it's because I just love teaching and helping people achieve their dreams. And so if you're interested in the Jazz Drummers Blueprint, please check the links below. And I hope to talk to you soon. It's not for everybody, but if it's for you, you're going to grow incredibly. So anyway, back to knowing more about subbing. So continue on with what you were talking about there, Andy.
Yeah. So well, I guess it kind of, I was going to say it goes without saying, but I guess we're saying it. You got to know the repertoire.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's something that we should all always be working on, right? Like,
you know how many students I've found that can't sing a melody accurately, rhythmically, right? So like singing Straight No Chaser or something like that. It's very difficult to sing that melody accurately. I mean, the horn players are doing it, but are you doing it as a drummer? Like, think about it. Take some tunes that like the listener listening out there right now, like take a tune that you say and sing the melody along with the music. And are you lining up? Are you doing everything that you're supposed to do? If so, great. If not, maybe relearn it a little bit, So check yourself with things like that, because melody is really important. Forms are really important. All those things, right? So if you're at least able to say, if somebody says, or if you speak up and say, hey, I don't really know that one, and they say, oh, it's cool, it's AABA rhythm changes. Do you know what that means? And if you don't, well, maybe you're not in the right place yet. So yeah, exactly, Andy. I mean, it doesn't go without saying, because I think it's assuming too much to not say that, from what I've seen in the world.
Great side tangent, though. Here we are tangenting already. I was going to say, often when I'm listening to drummers sit in or, jam sessions and stuff, you can really, really tell the players who know the tunes versus the ones who, don't really know the tunes and they're just playing based off of, oh, it's a swing tune. You know what I mean? Like that's what the instruction might be. But then when you hear a guy who knows the melody, knows the tune, knows the form, that's where the difference is,
Yeah.
and people notice that.
You know, it's
So
really funny. I remember this was a while ago, and I hope this person isn't listening. But I had a student a long time ago who said they went to a jam session. They sat in and they played stablemates, and he's like, "Yeah, I know stablemates." And I was like, "Really, you do? So what's the form to stablemates?" And if you don't know it, it's 14, 8, 14, right? And it's kind of broken up. Those 14s are broken up a little strange. And I said, okay. And it just so happened that they played at a place that had a live stream. And it happened that they had a live stream where I could check it during their lesson. And you know what? My student did not know the form to stablemates. And I was able to actually in that moment point out, like, hey, you actually don't know what's going on here, because here's the form. Let's count the form, and here's where you are, because I can hear you marking the form every 8 bars. So that's what I mean. It doesn't really go without saying. You really got to know. And just like Andy was saying, you can't just fake it. You got to really know these things. And if somebody says it's stablemates, and you're like, okay, and they'll say, and they tell you 14, 8, 14, you better be counting. You have to count. You have to, even if you don't get to the Latin section, you just have to, you forget everything else, count and keep good time. Don't even worry about interacting. Your main job is keeping the form, right? And so that's, that goes for subbing, that goes for sitting in, goes for whatever. If you don't know the form, figure it out real quick, and use your ears to figure it out too if you need to. That's a good way to go. But anyway, sorry, I keep hijacking.
Know the tunes. Know the repertoire. I guess that would be kind of number one priority when subbing for a jazz standards gig. So a lot of the things I was thinking about though was like kind of the etiquette of the whole deal. When you're going to sub, I think one of the most important things is you are not going to try to get this gig. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think a lot of times guys have the mindset, it's like, oh, if I go and play really good, they're going to hire me and, fire their drummer and hire me. I think that's the completely wrong mindset. I think the mindset is you're going to help out, to do a good job for the guy who asked you to sub, which is probably the other drummer. Could have been, somebody else from the band as well. And do the best job you can. Yes, you want to make a good impression. Realize that, these guys might have other projects, but you are not going to, it's not an audition for the gig in most cases. Sometimes it is, and they'll let you know that, right? I mean, a lot of times that's the way it can happen. But in most cases, that should not be your mindset going in. I think that's probably, if you want to lose friends,
don't go in being like, hey guys.
Gigs. Yeah, don't do that. That's not cool.
And also though, like if you do a really good job, that it could happen though. I mean, like it's happened for me at least once or twice where like they're like, oh, that's cool, and might be a month or two down the road, they'll call you back and say, hey, so we let so and so go. Would you be interested in being in this project? So it can happen, but you got to be really careful with that. I mean, in those circumstances, I always, since that other drummer is usually my friend, I'll call him up and be like, hey, what happened, before I even talk to the band, like what happened? Is everything cool? They asked me to join. Like, is that okay? Like, I mean, I want to do it because I like the band. I like the guys, but I don't want you to, be upset. And, that's also a kind of a factor too. Like when you're, it's the number one rule of hiring a sub, if you're a drummer, is never hire anybody that's going to do a better job than you. So, unfortunately it's true. You have to be careful who you get, or at least make sure if you do get somebody that's better than you, that they're too busy to steal your gig.
Or too expensive.
Or too expensive. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, with that, you just definitely don't want to steal the gig, but it can happen. But try not.
Yeah, but you shouldn't go in with the mindset that that's your goal, right? And so keeping along those lines, I think that you want to go in, you want to be as, even though it might not be your gig, you're subbing. Maybe you're doing someone a favor. Maybe it's not a high paying gig, or maybe it is. Either way, you want to go in with like the most professional attitude you can. You want to treat it as if it was your gig. Mm-hmm. From a caring perspective, right? You want to get there on time or early, right? You want to be dressed appropriately. All the stuff that we had talked about in some of the other episodes. Like you want to take it just as seriously because it's it's just the way you carry yourself.
You were a member of that band in that moment. Yeah.
It's super important, and you're going to make impressions on the other players, and maybe even if they don't have other projects, they
They can
have
write.
tons of musician friends, and
Yeah.
musician friends are always asking, "Hey, I need
Yeah.
a drummer for XYZ gig. Do you know anybody that could do it?" And they'll be, if you did a good job, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we had a guy sub a couple weeks ago. He knew all the tunes. He was really great. He was on time. Here's his contact."
Yeah. No,
Um,
networking is so vital to doing all this. And that's what your subbing is doing. Like if you don't know the
yeah.
band, you're expanding your networking, and you're getting paid for it and you're doing stuff. So another, we're kind of talking in the jazz realm, but another sub thing that comes up is like cover bands and tribute bands and sometimes bands, right? So I think I saw that JP Bouvet was subbing for someone recently. I think Matt Halpern or one of the bands. I don't follow them personally, but he had to learn all their
Mhm.
music, and that's what it comes down to, right? So like subbing for bands like that, or a tribute band or a cover band, you have a lot of repertoire to
So
learn.
that's preparation, right?
Yeah,
So now you get into a realm where it's like, okay, this isn't just tunes that I know that I can go and play.
right.
This is something that I have to sit down and actually learn tunes for. So that's something that you need to take into consideration when or before you accept this kind of gig, is like, oh, how much preparation is that going to be for me? And can I do a good job?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Am I the right person for this?
there's definitely, I can think of gigs, if, if there was like a punk rock loud metal gig, and someone asked me to do it, it'd be like, no, I don't think I could do it. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't be good at it. I like, no matter how much preparation I did. So you have to be honest at that regard, but also think about, do you have the time to prepare properly for
That's
this
such,
gig?
because you do not want to let that band down. You don't want
Right.
to fall on its
Right.
face, right? So
If you commit to it,
yeah,
you have to put in the time
all
for the
the hours.
preparation.
And
Absolutely.
it's funny. So like, what do you do in those circumstances? And I've done a few of those, and I know one time one of my first ones that I ever did was for this big band uh, that was doing kind of a little bit of a traveling gig. It was a long time ago, and they were like, "Hey, our drummer can't make it, and we'd like you to do it. Here's our CD." It was all originals, right? Here's our CD, and I was like, "Cool. Where are the charts?" They're like, "Oh, we don't have charts." I was like, "Okay, cool. How close to the CDs do you do? How close are the arrangements?" And they're like, they're pretty close." I said, "Okay, cool." So I took that CD and I charted out every single tune, which was really great. And in fact, like if you are able to chart out tunes, if you're able to just sit down and listen to tunes and chart them out, and this is what I do anytime I have to learn music like that, where there's no charts, especially, is I will sit down and I'll chart everything out and I'll put it in a notebook, and then I'll show up to the gig. In fact, I did that once more recently with a more of a CCM country gig, right? And I don't know the tunes, but they sent me like a bunch of tunes that I needed to learn, and instead of really practicing them, all I did was write out charts. And I showed up to the gig with the charts, and they're like, "You can read music and play at the same time?" And I was like, yes, I can. And they're like, "Wow, that's a real musician." And I'm like, okay, I'm not, but like, like this is just what you do to get through the gig, and then you play the gig, and everything's fine. And they're like, "Whoa, how'd you do that?" And I spent less time learning those tunes and being able to write out charts than I would have if I was just trying to memorize everything. Which, if you have time, is the better way to do it. You should have it memorized, but if you don't, I like having that crutch of having a chart that I wrote out, because that means I'm going to get it right. I'm not going to get it wrong. Plus, having that intense musical knowledge of the music that I'm writing out, it helps me remember it. If I see it on paper, I can visualize it in my head too. If I write it down on a piece of paper, I can visualize the music in my head when I'm playing. So a lot of times I don't, even though I write out the charts, I don't need the charts. So that's one way to do it. I got called. So with that gig too, a long time ago, the big band gig. So I wrote out all the charts. I showed up to the gig, and they're like, "Oh, also, by the way, it's going to be on the radio." So like, I was like, "Okay, no pressure, great." But we played the gig. It was awesome, and it was a lot of fun. And I got asked back to do another couple of gigs, I believe. And that was, I mean, this is a long time. We're talking 90s. That was the very first time I ever did anything that. And that was the moment that I realized how to sub for a gig too, because I was like, I'm just going to be as professional as I possibly can be. And I'm going to do the very best job that I can possibly do. And I'm going to make everybody around me comfortable and happy. And I've got a reputation to live up to. I already had a reputation, I guess. And I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that I was going to do great for them. And that's exactly what happened. And it was pretty awesome. So, you know, I more recently, because now I'm busier in life and music, I got called for a couple other bands that I said no to. One band was the music of a pretty popular 1980s star. I'm not going to say the name, but it wasn't that band, but it was a tribute to that band. And I'm just not a fan. And I didn't really know the music very well. And I knew that I asked them how long the gig was. And it was like 3 hours. Like, okay, cool. How much music am I going to need to know? They're like 50 tunes. I'm like, I'm going to have to pass, you know, like it was something like 50. It might've been like 30, but I was like, do you have charts? No. It'll be easy though. I'm like, no, it'll be easy for you because if you've done it a million times, it's going to be weeks of preparation for me. How much does it pay? $400. You break it down like per hour of just learning before you even get to this gig. I think it was in Tahoe, which is another hour and a half away. And then those gigs, they always want you there at like 8 a.m. so that you can do a 9 p.m. set, you know? So like you have to be careful with the edges and you have to know when to say no. And that particular one I had to say no to. And I'm glad I did. You know, I'm not worried about it. There's a couple of other situations that I've said no to in the past to sub for. And, you know, sometimes I regret it a little bit because it would be fun to do those bands. But at the same time, I just don't want to do the level of preparation that would take to do the level of job that I would want to do on the band. I don't like subbing for bands. And you're probably the same way, Andy. I don't like subbing or playing music where I feel like I just don't know what's going on. If I'm in a position where I'm like, what's next? You know, what's happening here? Then especially as a drummer, because we're in control of so many things musically. If I feel like my confidence is shaken from just not being prepared enough or like not knowing things, or like when they call audibles, like, hey, we're going to do this thing that you didn't learn. Like, wait a second. Why are we doing that? You know, you're not giving me an opportunity to be the best that I can possibly be. And then that feels weird to me and I don't like it. So I don't know. Is that similar to you, Andy, or?
Yeah. So I guess this is a good point, you know, when you're accepting a sub gig or considering it, is to know what you're getting yourself into.
Know the edges.
Right? So like ask questions and understand it. Now, I would say though, you know, like the gig that you're, you know, kind of talking about here, if you were a younger drummer, you know, who hadn't had so much experience and had this opportunity, even though it was a ton of work, you got to learn all these tunes. But if you're, you know, kind of on your way up the ladder, this is one of those gigs that could be like an opportunity gig, right?
And you know what? Those gigs did go to younger drummers, and the younger drummers did fantastic jobs, and it helped them. And now they've got other gigs in town, and they've done things, and it's been really good for them. So yeah,
an experience level, right? Like if you know you have the opportunity to do something that you've not done before, or maybe learn some music that you haven't learned before. You know, I mean, once you get to a certain point, you know, like you were saying, it's like, it's not, you know, might not be worth it for you to do. But certainly, you know, early on in your career, those kinds of things should be looked at like an opportunity to grow.
Oh, it's a gold mine for growth. Yeah, absolutely. And then you might find something that you like doing more than what you set out to do anyway. So it's like getting that experience and doing those things. Yeah, absolutely, Andy. Great point.
I think one of the goals too, when you take these kinds of gigs, is to, well, you know, let's go back to our kind of lower level jazz standards gig. If you're subbing for someone, I think maybe, you know, a decent mindset would be, you know, and this is probably the mindset that we should have all the time, right? Is you're there to make everyone else sound good,
feel good too,
right?
Like
feel good and sound good. And I think that you know, if you have that attitude going into a sub gig, I don't think you can go too wrong. You know, you're going to be listening, you're going to be playing to the other musicians, and everybody will appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So that's probably a good mindset. So let's maybe talk about what do you look for if you have a gig and you need to get a sub, other than not getting someone who's so much better than you, you're afraid for your gig.
So, you know, that's been happening to me lately. I haven't been able to do my big band gig as regularly as I've wanted, well, I guess haven't been as regular. So finally played it for the first time this year, really second time this year since January, this last month, in last week, I guess. And I need a sub again for next month because I'm going to be out of town again. So one of the things that I really look for is reliability and somebody that's going to do well by the band. And since I've been gone, I've had a regular sub that I like to call, because I like to, when you're calling a sub, let's say you have to call for a sub situation. I think the number one etiquette is to you handle it. And I think one of the ways that I like to do it is by calling up, like the big band that we have. The only way it's ever worked is we've all handled our own subs, and you just let the leader know, like, hey, I'm not going to be there. I got so-and-so to cover. And I've been gone so much that the leader's starting to say, hey, maybe we could try other drummers. I don't know if they're like trying to kick me out or not, but it maybe, who knows? They're like, Tim's not reliable anymore. It's only been 15 years. So whatever. So like one of the things that I like to do is just handle it before, or, sometimes you want to ask the band leaders. You might know who the band leader likes besides you, and so you can call and try and get that sub. But I think in general, the best etiquette that you can have as somebody with a gig is that you handle it for the rest of the band, so the rest of the band doesn't have to feel like they're scrambling. And the moment you know that you're going to need a sub is when you start working on getting a sub. Yeah. And you can call people and say, hey, I might have a gig for you on this day, and it pays this much, and it'd be with this band, and are you available? Would you want to do it? Give them all the edges. You always got to give them the edges. This is the time requirements, all that stuff. And I want to check with the band leader, but if you're available, I'd like to get you to do it as long as it's cool with everybody else. And, you'll have your sub lined up. You call the band leader. Hey, is it cool if I get so-and-so to sub for me on this day? Because I got to go fly to Kalamazoo, and whatever. And they'll be like, yeah, man, that's great. I'm glad you already have it set up, So you're really taking care of the legwork. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but being a band leader is a lot of work. You're dealing with things that are well beyond what a sideman has to deal with. So if you as a sideman or you as a band member can take care of some of the legwork of hiring your sub, that goes a long way. Now, again, don't hire anybody that you think is going to take your gig, or like maybe there's that one cat that's notorious for taking gigs in your town, which might be me. I don't know. Don't hire them, right? I don't get called to sub too much. So you don't hire them. Don't get them to sub. But you also want to make sure that you find somebody that is going to be very, 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 very capable, and that's going to make the band feel at ease and just take care of all the sub things that we just mentioned in there. And if you're a drummer in a town, you know who those people are. And if you know,
you need to find out.
Exactly. If you don't yet, then you need to find out. Exactly, Andy. So you'll find out who those people are, and they'll do a great job for you, and we'll see what happens, So like I said, my big band, because I've been subbing it out so much lately, they're starting to I don't know if they're auditioning new drummers or what they're doing, but they're starting to want to get new blood in, because they're even the subs are like, all right, I'm getting used to you, so yeah, so they're starting to ask different people, which is fine. And now historically I took care of it. Now they're asking for them to take care of it because they want to just see who else is out there. And that's totally fine with me. So, and even before, actually, this is great. The band leader hit me up. He was like, hey, you're going to be gone in July, right? It's like, yeah. It's cool if we get so-and-so again to sub. And I was like, yeah, of course. Wonder if I should read between the lines on that one, but that's, that's what it is. And I'm glad he did. And I'm totally fine with whoever subs, as long as they're happy. I want the band to be happy is what it comes to.
I think that the way you described, calling someone up, somebody you think might be a good sub, calling them up and say, hey, I have this gig I need a sub for, giving them all the details and saying it's not confirmed yet.
Right.
Pencil it in, and I will confirm it with you as soon as I hear from the band leader. I think that's a great way to do it, because then you can tell the band leader, it's like, hey, I got a sub lined up if you want them. Because a lot of times, though, the band leader might not be comfortable with someone that they don't know. So they might just say, oh, no, okay, we can't make it. No problem. I'll get somebody.
Yeah.
So you have to be prepared, because that might happen too, because they might, have somebody that they know that they're, much more comfortable with, versus,
Yeah.
somebody that you would hire that they don't know.
And
So
it does kind of like, it
yeah.
is kind of an awkward phone call if the band leader is like, nah, I got this other guy. So then you got to call the
That's
guy
okay
that you
though.
called up.
Yeah.
And, so
Yeah. But I
most
think
of
if
the
it's,
time that doesn't happen though, I'd say.
yeah, but if it's all done in a relatively short amount of time, like, you wouldn't want to drag that out. But
Oh,
I think that's the professional way to do it. At least I've approached it that way a couple times. I had the trio that I used to work with. The band leader would never want me to get a sub. All I had to do was tell him, "Oh, I can't make it this date," and he had a list of drummers, 20 drummers deep.
probably had
Man,
a bunch of people
it's
that he
not a
wanted to play with
problem
that he's
finding a
never
sub.
played with. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's not just the list of drummers, but like in a town like LA, you never know. You might get like Marvin Smitty Smith to sub for
yeah,
you,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Isn't that what happened? Or like
Well,
when you
yeah, a couple different guys. Yeah, yes, Smitty was one of them. But yeah, it's amazing in a place like that. It's like, if you have a $150 gig, like, you might get a world class musician to come out if they're not doing anything that night. It might be, the musicians know everybody. One phone call, it's like, hey, come out and play with us. It's only $100. Oh, it sounds like fun, and they'll come and do it. Yeah, so
yeah.
that happens once in a while. But yeah, so I guess. Probably not too much more to talk about here, but I think that, like, if you are subbing, um, you want to make it as easy as possible for everyone else in the band,
Mhm.
right? You want to make it so they don't have to stress over you being there as a sub. You want to make it as easy as possible, seamless as possible, do the best job you can, make it as stress free for them. And a lot of that has to do with getting there on time, so that
Yeah.
nobody's like worried about, who's going to be there. And then
Being
the
super
opposite
prepared.
too. Yeah. Like, if right, as prepared as you possibly can be.
I feel.
And
Do
then
you know the movie Pulp Fiction? Do you remember Pulp
oh
Fiction?
yeah, sure. Yeah.
You got to be the wolf, right? You got to be the wolf. For those of you that don't know, the wolf is the cleaner. Like, you got the wolf on it. Oh, why did you just say so? I'm editing a little bit so we don't get. But why did you say so? I'm going to be fine, right? So you want to be the wolf. You want to come in. You want to clean the situation. You want to make sure that you got everything taken care of, and you want the band to like be like. You want to show up, and you want band members to be like, "Oh, thank God you're here. You're the one. I'm so glad you're here because I know the job's going to get done." That's what you want.
Yeah. And when you're subbing out your gig, you want to hire that guy.
Yeah,
You want to hire the guy that is going to treat the gig in that fashion.
absolutely. Yeah. I think, I don't know if we've got anything else to say about it. I'm sure, like, if you guys have any other, comments or ideas about subbing, what are some sub situations? What is the most disastrous sub situation, Andy? Have you ever had a disastrous sub situation?
I had a potential sub situation that turned into a not sub situation.
Mm.
And that was, I was good friends with a bass player who I play with often, and we really enjoy playing with each other. He was a co-leader of a kind of pseudo big band, a bunch of horns. They do mashups of like classic jazz and classic rock tunes. Really
Mm.
cool band. Singer who was very, very, very particular about drummers,
Yeah. As they
and
should be.
notoriously hard on drummers, and likes what he likes, and that's it. The bass player really enjoyed playing with me and wanted me to play in this group to sub for him, because they often will hire the best guys. I mean, the drummers that have played for them have been just spectacular. But those guys are busy and sometimes they can't make it. So the bass player's like, hey, you should come and play with us. So he gave me the charts. I learned them as best I could. Crazy charts, time signature changes, all written out hits and stuff. And so I'm pretty much ready to sub. Gigs a few weeks away still. I had plenty of lead time. And they're like, hey, we're going to do a rehearsal and the singer's going to come. So it was keyboard player, bass player, myself, and the singer. And we played some of the tunes. I was doing a pretty good job. And we got through with one tune, and it was particularly difficult. And I did like as best as I could have done. Like, I got done and I'm like, yeah, that's about as good as I could have played that. Cool. The singer turns around and looks at me. Or actually, he didn't even turn around. Maybe he turned around and looked at me and looked back at the mic, and his comment was, that was interesting.
Okay.
I was, I was like, oh, that's not good.
Okay.
So at the end, like, we're like, okay, cool, take it easy. The singer shook my hand and he said, it was nice meeting you.
Yeah. All right.
And I was just like, oh man. And I thought I played pretty well. I was pretty well prepared. It wasn't like spot perfect, but I still, we were talking weeks out from this potential sub gig. So the bottom line was I wasn't the right guy for that gig. And I kind of knew it, but the bass player wanted me to give it a shot or whatever. I'm glad I did. I learned a bunch of
Yeah.
music, spent a bunch of time. But and I guess a question might be, well, what was it about your playing that made you not the right guy for the gig? And I think it was like they wanted, and listening to the guys who had played with them before, it's like a lot of bombastic, Buddy Rich kind of stuff, like louder, bigger, harder playing, more rocky playing. That's what I came away with. But that was the biggest disaster, which I guess is good because it wasn't a disaster on stage. It wasn't like,
Right.
I got on stage and they hated it. It was like, oh, we did this little rehearsal / audition and realized it wasn't the right thing.
Mm.
So that's what saved it. I'm trying to think if there's any other subbing stuff. I did sub for a theater show, and I think we talked about it one of the other episodes, and that was potentially one of the best experiences I had because I went to the show and watched it the weekend before. I got the book. I practiced the heck out of the book. And I did a pretty good job with
Actually,
it.
Andy, you brought up
Yeah.
just right there. That's a great point for something that you're going to do. If you're a sub and it's some sort of a regular gig, go watch the band, right? Go watch and see what they do ahead of time. If it's kind of one of those bigger sub things, like you're subbing for a show or subbing for something, that's a great thing that you did. We didn't even mention that. Go watch
Yeah.
them.
If you can. Yeah,
If
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
can,
It's
go
funny.
check out the band. Yeah. Even if it's
Definitely.
a jazz trio at a restaurant, go to the restaurant ahead
Yeah.
of time and check it out a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you can get the vibe of the gig, right? Like in
Yeah.
that situation, that's a really, that'd
You'll
be
figure
really
out
good.
what gear to bring too, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes
Mhm.
you'll show up. Man, I've done a couple where you show up and you've got all the drums and they're like, oh
Yeah.
hey, nobody told you it was backline? Like, no. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to hijack, but that was such a great point right there. We didn't mention it earlier.
Yeah. So that ended up being probably potentially my best sub gig, although the guy who I was subbing for was one of the producers of the show.
That's
So of course he was trying not to, he wanted to be there all the time. So I never got to sub that one again.
ah,
But it was a really great experience,
yeah.
and definitely successful. How about
Yeah.
so you related a little bit of your experience?
Well, I had one disaster and it went a real disaster. And I still feel bad about this. I think I was in high school even. I got called to sub for this gig and um, I said yes and I was ready to go and I was excited about playing with it with these people. They're a great bass player, great guitar player. And it was at a park and it was going to be really cool. And I think somebody was playing B3 organ too. So it was going to be like a fun gig. And that morning I woke up and was as sick as you could imagine to the point where I really wanted to do the gig, but I couldn't. I just could not do the gig. And it wasn't, I was subbing for a friend of mine and I unfortunately had to call everybody up and say, hey, look, I thought I could do this, but I was still living with my parents. My mom's like, you are not leaving the house. I was like, no, I gotta go. And she's like, no. So I never worked with them again because of that. And it sucks because I don't know if they thought that that really, it bugs me to this day because it made me feel undependable, right? It made me feel unreliable. And that was, I mean, legitimately, I've never worked with those people. I did see the guitar player at one point in my life. And I was like, hey, do you remember me? Like we were supposed to work together. And I called out like moments before the gig was going to start and couldn't make it because I was sick. He's like, yeah, I don't remember that at all. I'm like, okay, cool. So, all right, great. So the gig must have went okay. So, but for me, it kind of ate me up for a long time. Other than that, nothing really too disastrous. It's most everything, like it's mostly in my own standards. Like sometimes I'll sub for a band and I'll realize, hey, this is not a band I really should or want to be playing with because they're not as professional as I'd like to be. And so in a way, sometimes that's me auditioning the band that I'm playing with, you know. I personally like to strive for extreme professionalism. I like it when everything is taken care of, and not just musically, but business wise and all that stuff. And if it's not, I start to get, I'm not a happy camper, and it's very hard for me to cover up my my emotions. People start reading me, and I'm like, I really, trust me, I'd rather be doing this than anything else. But yeah, I'm not the happiest, and I'm sorry, but yeah, that's just me. Yeah, so I don't know, but I can't remember. Maybe if somebody's listening out there that I subbed for and everything sucked, let me know. Because maybe I've just blocked it out of my head. I'm sure there's been more disastrous ones, but
I would add too, like sometimes you can get called, like let's say in your situation where you had to call out sick the day of the gig. I've had several situations where I've gotten called, like, literally hours before the gig. Yeah. Hey, we need a drummer for tonight. Can you make it? And it's funny because the two that come to my mind are the two times when I was not even in the town. I was like, no, I won't be home until, and that's a bummer. But when you are available, and even if it's like a hassle, if you help people out like that, if you go out of your way to make it to that gig, people remember that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely worthwhile if it's at all in your ability to, help someone out of a jam.
Oh yeah. Go do it.
Yeah. That gets paid forward, right?
Yeah.
that'll come back with good karma.
I can't remember exactly. I mean, I've played so many gigs, just probably like you, Andy. I just can't remember everything, but I remember that there's been a few where I've actually shown up like very last minute like that, where they call me like, hey man, so-and-so got really sick and can't make it. Oh, is he okay? Yeah, everything's good, but we're about to start. Can you make it? Yeah. I'm like, well, I'm about 30 minutes away. Cool. We'll just play the first set without you, and then we'll go and do the rest, and it'll be great. And I've done at least a couple like that, and it's fun. It's fun to go and save the day. So
it's kind of the opposite, where like you have no preparation. There is no opportunity for you to prepare, and even if like it's a gig that playing tunes that maybe you're aware that you're not going to know a bunch of these tunes, but if you're like their last.
They don't care. They just want you there. Yeah.
You get the benefit of the doubt. You go, you help them out, you do the best you can, and nobody's gonna be mad at you for trying the best you can in that situation.
Yeah. Big ears help. So yeah, I think we've apart from like making sandwiches, we've got like all the subs covered right now. You get the Subway joke? Anyone? Come on, Andy, give me something.
Nope, not gonna do it.
Now.
We last episode we were talking about tempo and related things, and it was funny because just the next day I read a quote from Tim Alexander. Tim Alexander was Primus drummer, right?
Yep.
And what was the quote? Oh, he was talking about when the drummer comes in, there's like an emotional lift. And often, tempo can speed up. And he's like, that's when you, as a drummer, have a choice to make. You can either lean into it and go with it, or you can pull it back and keep it where it is. And the quote, and I'm sure I'm paraphrasing, was something like, tempo is an exercise in emotional control.
Yep.
And I was like, that is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Like, okay, so that in a way is so true for like playing fills and like going into playing like a chorus, or like when exciting parts of a tune happen, right? But over the long, like let's say you're playing a jazz tune, right? And you listen to like Misterioso or on In Walk Bud on Misterioso, right? And it speeds up like 30 beats per minute by the end of it, but it's been 15 minutes, or like it's like 9 minutes by the end. That's not an emotional thing, right? So that is just a part of maybe the tune just felt too slow when they played it, and it just kept speeding up incrementally over time. A lot of I love what Tim says, because I remember really struggling with some of those things, you know, especially with like playing in rock bands and your fills. Your fills tend to be those moments where everything gets exciting and it rushes, right? And I remember specifically having to tell myself to be calm. Be calm. Don't grip the sticks tighter. Don't hold your breath every time you play these fills. Holding your breath is a really important thing that people do a lot. And when anytime you hold your breath, you're going to rush most of the time. And so if you can control your emotions when you're doing those things, then absolutely you're going to stick with the time a lot better. And it's a weird thing because it's weird because music is emotion, right? And you want to create emotion. But if you go along with the emotion sometimes too much, it'll rush, it'll feel weird, it won't have the emotional impact that you think you're having, right? When you're playing, because you're like, oh yeah, but that's not that, you're not going to have that emotional impact, because what's going to happen is the music will push forward maybe too much and everybody will be kind of taken out of the moment. So yeah, man, that's such a great quote. I actually saw that too, I think on Facebook or something. And I saw that and it's like, man, that is deep stuff, Herb. So yeah, he was one of my favorite drummers. Primus was, you know, I've talked about Primus a few times on here, but you know, growing up, Primus was actually a big influence on me. I saw him live a couple times, and like really, I liked Les because I thought he was, you know, he was always into other styles of music and played jazz and stuff. And so yeah, I was always, and I love on Pork Soda, the album Pork Soda, Tim Herb Alexander does a percussion piece. Like there's just a straight percussion piece on that album that's really, really killer. I forget what it's titled, but it's super cool. And yeah, anyway, totally.
Well, maybe that could be your kind of recommendation for listening this week, which is the other thing that I wanted to get to because we keep forgetting to do it. We've only done it a couple times. And I like the idea that
listen to Pork Soda on the Jazz Drummer's Blueprint.
The idea that we're not necessarily telling you to listen to these necessarily old Philly Joe, Max Roach, Elvin stuff,
or very first recording ever, right?
You need to listen to that stuff anyway. You need to listen to that stuff, but just things that maybe we've been listening to or something that we thought was really interesting. And my kind of recommendation this week is something that I discovered during the pandemic, when, there wasn't a whole lot going on as far as going out. So I just watched various jazz live videos on YouTube, in the evening before bed. And, I discovered, Monte Alexander's, Kingston Harlem Express.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And man, and I saw a couple of those videos again over the last few days, and it's so cool. It's such a great concept. And what he does for the live shows, and you definitely want to check it out on YouTube, because there's a whole bunch of live videos of this stuff. And so he's basically fusing jazz and reggae, and he's doing a lot of classic reggae tunes like Bob Marley and stuff,
right?
In jazz format. But he's got two completely separate rhythm sections on stage. He's got two drummers, one guy who plays like a bigger kind of rock kit, who's like his rock reggae guy. And then he's always got like another jazz drummer. It's usually somebody famous. I think I saw Ulysses Owens Jr.
He was using Ulysses for a while.
Yeah. And there's been some other really, amazing players as well. And then they'll have like an upright bass player and an electric bass player. And they'll trade off during the same tune. Like there'll be a transition, and it'll go from like, really heavy, one drop reggae groove into like a swing section or something like that. Yeah. So check it out, man. You can, we'll put some links. I
was just writing down the links, so I made sure to put it in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Really cool stuff. Cool. And it kind of like opens you up a little bit to like what, some different potentials of jazz that maybe you didn't think about before, reggae and swing and the same thing. It's pretty cool. Man. And we love it because my wife is an absolute reggae and ska fanatic, and she always has been. So like if I put something like that on, like we're both happy, right?
Now I got to ask you, does she like the Agro Lights?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That was actually my wife loves the Agro Lights too.
All of it. There's a great
first bands that we saw together as a couple, actually, was the Agro Lights.
there's a great, well, it's a big band. I mean, bottom line is a big band is a Western Standard Time ska
Mhm.
orchestra
Yeah,
in LA. Yeah, unbelievable. Like
that's super cool.
really cool.
Great recommendation, Andy. I will definitely put that in the comments, and or not in the comments. Well, comments or wherever you can find a link, especially on the YouTube version of this. And yeah, I was also going to mention that by the time this comes out, it'll be a few weeks past, of course. But we lost Al Foster very recently. So if you haven't checked out this album, the Blue Mitchell album, the thing to do is one of the very early Al Foster records that is just a total masterpiece. And if you just check that out and then just go down the Al Foster rabbit hole, if you wanted to listen to some more Al Foster, go for it. He was such a legend, I got to see him a couple times in New York, and man, he was just such an amazing player and so musical and so deep in the music when he played. And we talk about playing with intention a lot in the Blueprint, and just in general with your playing. And I would like to say that when you were around the Masters, like I was around, I got to see Al Foster play, I got to see Elvin Jones play, I've gotten to see Dave Weckl, I'll call him up there, as a master in terms of the drums. I've seen a lot of people. I saw Max Roach play, Jack DeJohnette. I mean, I could just go down the list and tell you all the people that I've seen play. Tony Williams, I got to see Tony before he passed. And one thing that was really, really evident was that with all the players, whenever you go see somebody play that's at that master level, you will know that they're at that level because you can see the intention. You can hear it, you can see it, you can feel it. And I would say there is no player more intentional than Al Foster, which is crazy because in the giants that I listed, they're all so intentional. But I mean, Al Foster was just so part of the music, and he dissolved. He was not there anymore. His music was, and it was just so. I've very rarely seen somebody transcend like that on the stage, and Elvin could do it. He certainly did it, but man, yeah, Al Foster. So check out Al Foster, and if you haven't already, and take that Blue Mitchell record and listen to it, and hope you enjoy it. So anyway, I think that'll wrap it up. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, cool. Lots of stuff. Lots of stuff we should all go listen to.
Absolutely, great listening recommendation.
All right, we'll talk at you next time.
All right, everybody. Well, we'll see you next time. Be sure to check out the Jazz Drummers Blueprint and in the link in the link in the description. And I hope to talk to some of you guys in the future. And just, send us comments. Let us know what you want to hear as well. Like if there's any topics that you'd like us to discuss or that you think are going to happen. And then look forward to some guests on the podcast here. So we've got some special guests lined up, and I can't wait for you guys to check them out. So, all right, until the next one, we will see you guys next Friday.